Your microbiome controls everything from what you are allergic to, your digestion, your capacity for things like autoimmune diseases, your immune system, your metabolism. The list goes on and on and on. Ultimately, at the end of the day, everybody has a slightly different population of microbes, and that population can change over time all by itself. There's no definition of a quote unquote normal microbiome, only what is normal for that person and their current individual circumstances. Just like we have bio-individuality when it comes to our diet, like what you need from food is going to be different than what I need from my food. Bio-individuality happens with our guts too. And so it's no wonder that our diets require bio-individuality for optimal functioning of our gut, our metabolism, and all of these different things. Hi, I'm Kelley Namiro. Welcome to the Balancing Chaos podcast, a lifestyle podcast where we'll talk about wellness, motherhood, and some really exciting things in between. My goal is to help you develop a lifestyle that promotes health, wholeness, and success. Through my conversations with our experts and guests, I hope to inspire you to live a beautiful, full, and joyful life as you navigate balancing the chaos. Hello, 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 my beautiful people. I am so excited to be here with you today. We are going to be talking about the topic that is coming up the most in my DMs, something we've been talking about on Instagram a lot this week, and that is gut health. And I'm super excited to talk to you guys about this. I actually have a whole module on this in my health and hormones course when I am testing women to help rebalance their hormones. We test for this because of how intricate the interplay is between your gut health and your hormones. Usually, if there is one off, so is the other, whether that is because you are chronically stressed, your adrenals are out of whack, and that is what is depleting your gut health. You have estrogen dominance, and so you have estrogen that's recirculating and you're not getting enough fiber, and that's what's affecting your gut health. There are so many different ways that the hormones can interplay with your gut health and the microbes within your gut. What I hear most often before we get into the details is I'm bloated. I'm uncomfortable. I feel like by the middle of the day, my jeans don't fit. Or if I eat certain foods, I feel like I am not comfortable in my own skin. I feel gassy. I feel brain fog. I feel anxiety when I'm bloated. I don't feel myself when I'm bloated because I feel so uncomfortable in my body that I feel irritable. And let me just tell you, I felt that way for so many years. I remember a point in my life where I was living in New York, and it should have been, and for a lot of the time it was the best time in my life. But because my gut was so messed up, there would be nights where I would come home and I would be like in so much pain, like laying on the floor, or feel like I had to take a bath because that was the only thing that helped like kind of soothe some of the pain and discomfort. I would call my mom multiple times a day and be like, should I go get a colonoscopy? I actually did end up getting a colonoscopy when I was like 26 because I was so terrified that there was something deeply, deeply wrong with me because I was constantly gassy. I was constantly bloated. I would have this interplay between constipation and diarrhea that would never improve or get better. My cravings for sugar were insane. Like I would have to stop on my way home, and if I was going to get one cupcake, I would eat like two or three because I could not control my cravings. And it was just, yeah, my gut was just an absolute wreck. It was a mess, and it impacted not only how I felt in my body, but like how I felt about myself, how I talked to myself, how I felt in my clothes, how I felt about wearing something like a bathing suit. And then there was the whole factor that I didn't realize was even connected between me having gut issues, feeling like I was always bloated, feeling like I was having issues with going to the bathroom, and then getting yeast infections, like literally once a month. And what I never connected at the time was the fact that for years and years and years, when I was dealing with my acne, I was on multiple rounds, probably for years, of antibiotics. I took the birth control pill for over a decade. And at the time, I had no idea that both of those things could play into having candida overgrowth and yeast overgrowth and dysbiosis of the gut. Now that I have gone back to school, read all the books, gotten a certification in nutrition and diet, I know the impact on the gut. And that's part of what I'm going to share with you guys today. So if you're somebody who feels like you just do not have control of your digestion, you feel like you never know what to eat because anything could throw your gut off. You feel like when you have certain foods, you are just uncomfortable in your body for the rest of the day, or even if you eat anything, you're uncomfortable. We are going to go through all of that today, and we're going to really talk a lot about how you can start to heal. And this is a protocol that I share in my course. But what I'm going to do with you guys today is share a big part of how that works. If you're looking at it from a more general sense, a protocol that could really work no matter what gut kind of like condition, I should say, what kind of gut condition you're dealing with. So let's start by talking about the fact that there are over 100 trillion bacteria, viruses, and yeast cells in your colon. I think a lot of people don't know that. Now, while all of these 100 trillion bacteria, viruses, and yeast cells should be there to a certain degree, they should not be in your small intestine or your stomach. When we have bacteria growing in the small intestine, we call that, especially if it's an overgrowth and you're getting upper digestive pain, we call that small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. But let's start for a second with your colon. So like I said, 100 trillion bacteria, viruses, yeast cells in your colon. That includes 500 to 1,000 different species. And this is called your gut flora. And you might have heard other people call this your microbiome. And these bacteria that are in your colon are acquired at birth from your mom through a vaginal delivery, through breastfeeding, and then through the environment around us. That's why you'll hear people say, and this is no shame on people who have C-sections, there's absolutely a medical reason to need to do those, that when you're born via a vaginal birth, your microbiome off the bat as a baby, as an infant, starts out stronger. A baby born via C-section compromises the microbiome and then they're getting their microbiome from mother's skin to skin contact versus, like I said, babies who are born vaginally who colonize their microbiome through the mother's birth canal. The composition of the microbes change during pregnancy. So the actual health of your microbiome actually starts to decline through pregnancy, which I think a lot of people don't know. But it also changes in the sense that it makes it more capable for the baby to pick up bacteria. Babies born via C-section miss out on these microbes, which explains why that they're at a higher risk for things like allergies, why they are at a higher risk for things like type 1 diabetes. And I think that a lot of people don't really put together the fact that your microbiome controls everything from what you are allergic to, your digestion, your capacity for things like autoimmune diseases, your immune system, your metabolism, the list goes on and on and on. So ultimately, at the end of the day, everybody has a slightly different population of microbes, and that population can change over time all by itself. There's no definition of a quote unquote normal microbiome, only what is normal for that person and their current individual circumstances. So Just like we have bio-individuality when it comes to our diet, like what you need from food is going to be different than what I need from my food. I might need more protein. You might need more fiber, just depending on where you're at and what symptoms you're going through and what hormonal imbalances you have. Bio-individuality happens with our guts too. And so it's no wonder that our diets require bio-individuality for optimal functioning of our gut, our metabolism, and all of these different things. So under normal circumstances, if you're eating a healthy diet, if you're not super stressed, if you're not on a ton of medications, you have a pretty good relationship with your gut flora. The bacteria get fed, and in turn, a lot of them do a lot of really important things for you, like making nutrients for the cells in your gut lining, formulating vitamins, processing trace elements, breaking down fiber. The microbes in your gut do so many things for you. They produce sulfur, which is a really strong anti-inflammatory compound. It's a win-win most of the time when we are, again, doing the right things with our lifestyle. It gets off track when certain things go out of whack, and I'll explain what those things are. So when the gut flora are out of balance, it's called dysbiosis, which means not living well together. And so that's when the good bacteria in your gut and the bad bacteria in your gut are out of balance. Usually there is an overgrowth of the bad bacteria and not enough of the good bacteria. And there's typically 6 different factors that start to influence dysbiosis. And those 6 factors are stress, illness, aging, antibiotics, alcohol, and a poor diet. Usually that includes a lot of sugar and a lot of processed foods. And so I did like, oh my hands, 4 and 2. If you're watching the video of this, I don't know why I just counted like that, but that's 6. So let's start by talking about stress, because it absolutely influences the microbes in your gut in a similar way to how stress impacts your entire body. The microbes in your gut are able to recognize stress and react to the stress hormones in your body. And that can cause shifts in the population, making your body more susceptible to infections. That's why you hear a lot of people who have poor gut health tend to get sick more often, tend to have a weakened immune system, right? And so the population shift also makes your gut vulnerable to becoming leaky. The body interprets this, whether it is you are doing excessive exercise as stress, you're going to see a shift in your gut flora. Whether you are really stressed at work, whether you are not eating enough food, that's a big one that's going to change your gut flora. And that's a huge reason why my gut flora was influenced so poorly. If you're not eating enough food to feed the good microbes, they die off. Now, when we think about exercise, just using that as an example, we're not talking about, you exercising every day. We're talking about a lot of really intense exercise for a really long duration of time, right? Where you're like training for a marathon. What that ends up doing is it's shifting the blood supply from your gut to your extremities for a long period of time, resulting in a breakdown of the stomach lining and a shift in the microbe population. And unfortunately, there's really no way to counteract stress caused by doing things like intense physical exercise or running for a long period of time. Most women who, let's say, again, we'll just use training for the marathon as an example, tend to also have irregular periods. And the only way to fully address this is to reduce the intensity and duration of your workouts so your body is under less stress. So the next thing is illness, right? And so that's something that you can't control. You really can't control whether or not you get sick, but it can absolutely change the population of your gut flora. And so critical illnesses can disrupt your gut flora. Infection, trauma, chronic disease, like where there is illness, again, there is a blood supply shortage to the GI tract. And also in cases of severe illnesses, the gut is not being used to feed the patient. Like if someone's going and getting IV nutrients or being fed through like a feeding tube sometimes. They also might be receiving medications like antibiotics that all impact the gut flora, right? And so it takes a long time to get back to normal function again. And for some people, they might never get back to completely normal function. So if you're thinking about your gut health, you really want to consider, have I ever had any severe illnesses or a long stay in the hospital? When the body becomes infected with, you know, things like even diarrhea causes bacteria to be disrupted, the population of the gut microbes get killed off, the good bacteria and the diarrhea causing bacteria starts to overgrow. There are so many different ways when we get sick that our gut microbe is impacted. And so your body also, when it has these overgrowth of bad bacteria and not enough good bacteria, your body is susceptible to other illnesses, right? So let's talk about HIV, for example. That's absolutely known to affect the gut flora, decreasing the beneficial bacteria and increasing the gas-producing ones. So then we move on to the next factor, which is age. The older we get, our gut bacteria change. And aging itself is made the culprit, but it's actually not really age itself so much as it is the snowball effect of things that change as you age. Typically, people who are getting older are on more medications. Typically, people who are getting older are more stressed. Typically, people who are getting older have dietary changes. And medications can change how your food tastes and what's appealing to you. So that causes you to alter your diet. So even in older people, gut health can be improved in changes with your diet and with your medications. So that's another thing to just be aware of. It's not necessarily your age, but your lifestyle factors that change with most people as they age. Your doctor probably isn't taking into account the potential worsening of GI symptoms and writing prescriptions. So I really think that using this information that I'm giving you today to empower you when you're talking to your doctor or your holistic practitioner is really, really important. So your doctor can prescribe you, if you're getting a prescription, something that's less harmful to your gut, because things like antibiotics, and we'll talk about all these different things that have an impact on your gut today, whether that's birth control, antibiotics, things like, and NSAIDs. There's so many different things that have an impact on your gut. But let's start with antibiotics. It makes sense that gut flora would have a response to antibiotic use because they're very familiar to the bacteria that are being treated with the antibiotic, right? Even just 1 week of antibiotic treatment can result in yeast overgrowth and the expansion of less beneficial bacteria populations. And so what do you see when you're doing something like that? Like what are the symptoms? You're probably going to have horrible diarrhea if you are getting a change in the population of your gut bacteria for the worse. You're going to get really bad diarrhea and bad gas. Antibiotics negatively impact the healthy bacteria populations, which in turns allows these resistant antibiotic resistant populations to overgrow. And that leads to a course of repeat infections with resistant bacteria. So let's just give you an example of what I'm saying with all of this. Let's say you've taken antibiotics for a UTI, and then you have the UTI come back. This is a reason why that happens, because unfortunately, the effect can last up to 2 years after the antibiotics have been stopped. You have become resistant to those antibiotics, those bacteria have become resistant to the antibiotics. And so the infection keeps coming back and coming back and coming back. So it's so important to remember that a course of antibiotics should always be completed. You could be on antibiotics for a variety of reasons. And you always don't want to take the last you because you think, oh, I'm fine, I feel fine. But you're not doing your body any favors by stopping them early. When only a partial course of antibiotics is taken, this increases the resistance of bad bacteria. Now, by no means am I here promoting antibiotic use, because like you guys heard me say at the beginning of the episode, a huge part of why I had candida in the first place was because I overused antibiotics. It was horrible. It caused so many negative symptoms for me. And I think that addressing it with your doctor and addressing alternative options is really important. But when you only take part of the course, this is something my husband does, and God love him, but his dad is a doctor. You can't do that. It increases the resistance of the bad bacteria, crowding out the good, leading to more infections, which become progressively harder to treat. The old adage, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, is so true for antibiotics. If you don't take enough to completely kill the bad population, the remaining few of that bad population of bacteria are going to grow stronger and more resistant and continue to crowd out the good bacteria. And it's not only people who are using antibiotics that disrupt your gut flora. If you're eating commercially raised chicken, if you are eating commercially raised beef or pork, they are given antibiotics which are brought into your body when you eat their meat. And that is why it is so important, you guys. If you're going to spend your money when it comes to food on anything like pasture-raised, organic, please do it with your meats, because you don't want to eat all the antibiotics and hormones that are in conventionally raised animals. Other medications can impact your gut flora as well. Things like Pepcid and Zantac are known for their negative impact on your gut flora. They decrease the production of mucus, which is absolutely critical for maintaining the population of good bacteria. People on long-term acid-blocking meds are more likely to have SIBO, which is an abnormal overgrowth of bad bacteria in your small intestine. Another medication that really impacts your digestion is NSAIDs. So things like ibuprofen and aspirin that can break down the delicate lining of your digestive system and allow these small little particles, toxins, food particles, all of these things to get into your bloodstream, which causes inflammation. These toxins and food particles get into your bloodstream, and they are not meant to leave your GI tract. Alcohol really disrupts your intestinal environment and your gut flora. Most people know that like long-term alcohol use can result in liver disease, but what does that really mean? Liver disease occurs when there is a breakdown in the intestinal wall, which actually allows the bacteria to get out and attack the liver. Alcohol affects your gut microbiome because it encourages this overgrowth of bacteria in your small intestine, and it shifts the population of the colon from good bacteria to the ones that produce toxins and damage the cells of your colon. So please be careful with your alcohol intake. When I think about what I'm telling you guys with all of these like 6 different things that cause dysbiosis, I'm like, wow, like I go back in my life and I'm like, okay, I was drinking a ton of alcohol, like binge drinking alcohol all the time when I was living in New York. I was super stressed because I had a job for an event planner and I was getting my MBA. I was on birth control. I was taking NSAIDs for pain. I had used years and years of antibiotics. So that one is a check. And I was eating tons of processed food and sugar. And so really the only things that I wasn't, doing, I was really young at the time. So aging wasn't an issue, but all of the factors that go into the aging, like I said, were issues. And then illness technically wasn't really an issue at the time for me, but everything else I was doing were the things that encouraged dysbiosis, right? And so knowing this stuff is what's going to help you get to the root cause and change your lifestyle. So finally, after this conversation, I think that you now are aware that those things all have an impact on your microbiome. But the biggest thing that impacts your microbiome is, of course, your diet. Your gut flora has the ability to shift and change over time based on the food that you are consuming the most, right? And so this is actually a really good thing because it allows you to be in control of what you are eating. And that doesn't mean that your gut bacteria doesn't influence your cravings, but you have the willpower and the momentum and motivation when you know the impact of your diet to change what you are eating. So let's talk about this. Vegetarians are going to have a very different gut flora than meat eaters because they have bacteria that favor breaking down carbs versus bacteria that favor breaking down proteins. The Western diet, obviously, has been shown to have a really negative effect on your microbiome. The Western diet is typically made up of high sugar, high processed food, low fiber, inflammatory fats, and commercially grown meats, all of the things that we do not want. And the good news is that your body responds very quickly to dietary changes to shift your microbiome to more beneficial bacteria and decreasing the inflammatory toxic bacteria. And it's just such a wonderful reminder that our bodies are always, you guys, our bodies are always working for us. That means, like, if you shift your diet, it will result in shifts pretty quickly to your gut flora, and you're going to start feeling better pretty soon thereafter. And that's really encouraging. And the best way to do that is to decrease your sugar intake. So stop eating things with tons of added sugars. Look at the back of boxes and packages and see if there's more than 10 grams of added sugar. You really don't want more than 10 grams per meal. Increase your fiber. You want to be eating about 30 to 35 grams of fiber a day, and improve the quality of the meat and fat you're consuming. So no more processed seed oils, no sunflower oil, no soybean oil, no none of those like processed oils that stay in your fat cells for decades, and no more conventional meat. Really try to buy your meat organic and pasture raised. And there are so many other ways to get protein sources if that is not an option for you.
Hi, I'm Kelley Namiro, your host, certified holistic hormone coach, and Pilates instructor for the WBK method. You can consider me your guide in helping you curate the very best version of yourself from the inside out. Feeling physically better by optimizing your hormones to feeling mentally and emotionally better by creating a more deep and grounded connection with yourself. I get questions all the time in my DMs about things like, what supplements should I be taking for my menopause symptoms? Or is it normal that I'm always exhausted? My doctor said that's what happens as I get older. Or maybe I gained 20 pounds in the last couple of years and I have no idea how to lose it. And even I'm chronically bloated and I've tried every elimination diet. Please help. But here's the thing. There are no quick fixes out there. Until you know the root cause of what's going on in your body and you use precision supplementation, a targeted diet, and mindset and lifestyle changes that are specific to your unique circumstances and lab values, you're never going to be able to heal. Throwing just random supplements that make all these promises or a restrictive diet at a weight issue is never going to work because it's not focused on what's going on internally with you. And often we can make the problem worse when we do these things. And that's why I've created the WBK Lab Review Package. In this package, you'll receive lab kits and a custom lab form based on your symptoms and health history. Once you've completed the saliva kit for your adrenals, the stool kit for your gut health, and the blood tests for your hormones and other health markers, we'll sit down together and create a customized plan that will help you balance your hormones in a holistic way so that you can lose weight, have more energy, maintain a balanced mood, and achieve the results that you've been wanting. This year, it is time to get the results that you've been dreaming of because you're targeting your unique system. If you're ready to experience more energy, comfort, confidence in your body, and relief from those nagging symptoms that have been bringing you down, I would love to support you in doing just that. This program includes a one-on-one call between you and me, all of the labs needed to create your customized protocol, and a PDF with your unique plan that you'll be following going forward so that you can take your time in implementing your new diet, supplements, and lifestyle changes. To learn more about this, head to the link in the show notes or go to wellnessbykelley.com to learn more about the WBK lab review.
So we are going to talk about the potential reasons your gut is not working properly and the symptoms that are associated with the 4 most common GI conditions. So this is something that I was talking about on Instagram also this past week, because so many of you guys will message me and be like, well, I have bloating, but I can't go to the bathroom. What do you think it is? Or I have, diarrhea and I can't stop that and I'm super anxious. What do you think that is? And without proper testing, we're not going to know what that is, because the symptoms can really overlap. So let's start by talking about what are those 4 most common gut malfunctions. They are small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, or SIBO, yeast overgrowth, or candida, a leaky gut, and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And with these 4 conditions, there are about 50 million people every single year in the United States that are seeking some sort of medical attention because of digestive disease. And those people, those 50 million people, are spending about $32 billion collectively a year in this industry to try to figure out how to heal and fix their guts. But if we could just think about how much time and how much money could be saved if we just addressed the underlying causes, like what we were just talking about with those 6 causes of dysbiosis, rather than just treating the symptoms. Like, just think about that. If we're not treating symptoms, we're not taking Pepcid or Tums or Zantac, and we're actually treating the root cause, think of how much money it would save people. Think of how many people would not be in that system. It can be really hard to figure out what you're dealing with, which condition you're dealing with, because like I said, there are so many overlapping symptoms between these conditions. And a lot of clients who I see, if they have one of these conditions, they have a different one, right? Some people even have all 4. It does seem with the research that we have that fatty liver disease is a result of all 3, because it usually appears last, but they're all related to inflammation and they all change your gut flora. And so, like I said, a lot of people have all of these like overlapping symptoms. And so some of those symptoms might be brain fog, anxiety, PMS, gas and bloating, depression, urgency to go to the bathroom, mucousy bowel movements, loose stool, constipation and diarrhea, or a combination of the 2, food sensitivities, carb intolerance. So you get bloated after eating things like fiber or beans. So if you have one or a variety or a combo of those symptoms, you're going to want to listen to this part of the show. So we're going to start by talking about leaky gut. In order for you to be able to have a healthy GI tract and a healthy digestive system, your GI tract has to be intact. It's absolutely critical for having good gut health. But the lining of your gut is only 1 cell layer thick. Let me say that again. The lining of your gut is only 1 cell layer thick. That is so thin. It's so delicate. And so underneath this thin lining are barrier cells that protect the gut from toxins and keep waste products from entering into your bloodstream. Your gut is designed to be a little bit leaky because that's going to allow nutrients and water to pass through. When the system breaks down, that's when it becomes too leaky, and everything from large food particles, not just nutrients, but food particles, to toxins can get through. And of course, if things are getting through into your bloodstream, that's bad news. What's good to have inside of the wall of the gut is not good to have in your bloodstream. Those bacteria that do all of the good work in your GI tract can actually cause really big problems when they escape into the bloodstream. So what is causing the gut lining to break down? Typically, the initial hit that people take is hereditary. It's genetic. Some people are just more susceptible. Unfortunately, sorry if this is you, they're more susceptible to having a leaky gut barrier, which is particularly true for people who have things like celiac disease or Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. It's actually the bacteria that protect the gut barrier wall, especially in the colon, as long as the healthy bacteria are beneficial and numerous and they help to maintain the barrier. But when the balance of gut flora shifts to bad bacteria, inflammatory bacteria, toxic bacteria, that barrier starts to break down. And so things like whether it is inflammation from grains or inflammation from sugar and dairy, inflammation from inflammatory fats like soybean oil or vegetable oil, commercial meats like we talked about, alcohol, birth control, all of these things can contribute to the breakdown of your gut barrier. The chronic release of cortisol, you're so stressed all the time, can break down the gut wall, which causes increased permeability. This is like really one of the most valuable reasons why people can really benefit from reducing their stress. I think so many people, like we've talked about this, we don't recognize the benefit of stress reduction practices. But if you're somebody with gut issues, I promise you that you can benefit from reducing your stress, prioritizing. We have a whole different episode on that that I will link in the show notes. But please, like, if you're trying to heal your gut, think about how you can also reduce your stress. So, if you are experiencing GI symptoms because of your stress, it's also probably making you sick. So zinc deficiency has an effect on leaky gut as well. Zinc has an effect on proper cell division and strong cell membranes. So the first symptom that you usually complain about, or you usually hear people complaining about if they have leaky gut, is food sensitivities, where all of a sudden you can't eat so many of the things that in the past you had incorporated in your diet. You can't eat gluten, you can't eat dairy, you can't eat any of these things without feeling gassy or bloated, or your sugar cravings are just so out of control. Things like fiber make you absolutely miserable. Gluten is actually a really big particle. So normally it actually can't fit through the small permeability of the intestine. But when your barrier is broken down and there are these bigger holes in your intestinal lining, these big gluten molecules can get through and then they wreak havoc on your system. So the next thing I want to talk about is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And so normally your small intestine has very little bacteria in it. But if the bacteria gets out of balance, the bacteria population can start to grow like crazy in an area where it's not supposed to grow at all. And when the beneficial bacteria in the gut are lower, the inflammatory bacteria can inhibit the small intestine, and the result is things like gas and bloating and poor digestion. The cells of your small intestine cannot do their job of absorbing nutrients and liquids, and that starts to result in things like really uncontrollable gas, lots of pain and discomfort in the upper GI, and for some people, diarrhea. So a lot of people who eat a higher carbohydrate, low fiber diet also have a tendency towards SIBO. Low stomach acid is also associated with SIBO because the stomach acid in your stomach usually kill the bacteria before they can make it into your small intestine. And there's this little gate between your small intestine and your colon called the ileocecal valve. And for some people with SIBO, that valve doesn't stay closed and it allows the contents of your colon to wash up into your small intestine. So there are a variety of reasons and ways that somebody might have small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. People with leaky gut or SIBO are typically more likely to be sensitive to things called histamines in your food. Histamine is a chemical that is involved in the neurotransmission and immune and in your immune system. And so people who are listening, you're probably like, I've heard of antihistamines before. Those are used in my allergy medicine. And those medications block histamines, right? And so some people are reactive to foods that release histamines into their system, causing a variety of symptoms, whether that is sneezing, anxiety, hives, hard time sleeping, swelling. People with leaky gut and SIBO, like I said, are more prone to these foods that have histamines. And gut dysbiosis makes this issue so much worse. So what are foods that have histamine in them? For those people who are wondering, like, oh my gosh, do I maybe have SIBO or leaky gut? Do I have a histamine sensitivity? If you are sensitive to foods like yogurt, sour cream, cheese, cashews, avocados, spinach, tomatoes, chocolate, dairy, you may have a sensitivity to histamine containing foods. So before considering histamine sensitivities, it's really important to genuinely rule out food sensitivities. But none of these things, whether it's a histamine sensitivity or a true food sensitivity, are considered allergies. And so the more you heal your gut, the more you heal the lining of your gut, the more you reduce the inflammation of your gut, the more you are capable of eating and reincorporating all of these foods again. So once those, sensitivities are better understood through testing, whether that's I typically recommend doing a blood panel for that, and knowing whether it's a sensitivity or an allergy, then you can start yourself on a gut healing protocol. So for some people, again, who have SIBO, we're going to put them on a low histamine diet, right? And so the key word for people who have a histamine sensitivity is you want to eat fresh food. You want to avoid anything that is smoked, anything that is aged, anything that is fermented, anything that is canned. So when we think about low histamine foods, those are usually things like fresh caught fish, eggs, fresh fruit, except tomatoes, fresh vegetables, except things like spinach and eggplant. You want to use dairy substitutes. You want to use gluten-free grains, things like quinoa, cooking fats like olive oil. And then you can use a lot of different herbs and supplements to help with this, which we'll get to in a little while. So the next thing we are going to talk about, the third malfunction, is the one that I told you guys. I've told you guys, if you've been following me on Instagram for a while, if you're somebody who deals with chronic yeast infections, your girl hears you. And I thought it was going to be something that I had to deal with my entire life. And I can tell you with so much happiness in my heart that I haven't had a yeast infection in literally like 10 years. Hallelujah. Thank goodness, because it was such a nightmare. And so when yeast takes over your GI tract, it makes an absolute mess of it. And the most common yeast found in the body is called candida albicans. And this is a normal part of your gut flora, and it usually doesn't cause any symptoms. But when it overgrows, it is caused by stress, gut flora imbalances, and it can cause your immune system to be impaired. And so when candida or yeast overgrows, it creates this biofilm, which is this large, it sounds so gross just saying this, but it is a large group of yeast buds that are surrounded by this thick covering, which makes it really resistant to treatment. And this biofilm starts to coat your whole GI tract. And when the gut barrier cells are intact, the yeast stays in the GI tract where it causes things like gas and bloating. But when you have candida, with leaky gut, it can spread to other areas of your body. And this is what part of what I was dealing with, because I knew I had candida and leaky gut at the same time. You get things like fatigue, brain fog, really intense sugar cravings, vaginal yeast infections, skin rashes, itchy ears. And this combo of yeast and leaky gut, if you have this compromised immune system, can allow candida to enter the bloodstream, which can be fatal. And that's rare, right? But like being somebody who is riddled with fatigue and anxiety and cravings and yeast infections, like that's no way to live your life. And trust me, from someone who lived that life for a long time, it is not fun. And so if you're looking to start to resolve the yeast and leaky gut, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I just want you to know that it is 100% possible. And for me, not saying that everyone can do this, but for me, when I did rounds of an antifungal and that were prescribed by a doctor, so it was called, the one I used was called diflucan, and I did all of these different things that were prescriptions, none of them worked. But when I finally changed my diet and used different herbs and supplements, that was what actually sealed the deal. And finally got me better. So the last gut condition that I want to talk about is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is likely a manifestation of a metabolic syndrome. And the liver is a really important part of your GI, where protein and fat complete their transformation and become energy sources, and bacteria and toxins are broken down. Your liver also produces bile, which helps to break down fat. And so when your liver stops functioning properly, your whole system is out of whack. When we overeat, the energy is stored in the liver, and it's usually initially stored as glycogen, which is sugar, but as more and more energy accumulates, the liver stores fat. Leaky gut allows these toxins to reach your liver, which causes inflammation. And then you gather more fat around it. And that's called non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. And this is problematic because it's part of metabolic syndrome. It means that you're at risk for things like heart disease and stroke and diabetes. And the good news is that this process is reversible by correcting your blood sugar. And so we're going to do a whole show because I figure you guys, like, I love getting really into the nitty gritty about these topics, and you guys love talking about metabolism with me. And so the next one we do will be all about metabolism and blood sugar status. But the good news is that this process is reversible, like I said, and you can start to correct it by correcting your blood sugar. But over time, if that's not corrected, the inflammation can cause scarring, which causes your liver to function even more poorly. And when that happens, it's not reversible, and it's actually really, really serious. So now that we've covered a lot of things when it comes to your digestive system, I want to talk about how we can heal and how you can start to at least bring a little bit of love and care and attention, no matter what you're dealing with, to your digestive system. Now, does this mean that I think you should only follow this protocol and not get any testing done if you're dealing with GI issues? No, please go get the testing done. Please figure out exactly what it is that you are dealing with, because unless you know, you're not going to be able to take the right supplements. You're not going to be able to be on 100% the right diet. So really, please stop, pause, think about going and doing either a GI map or a GI effects test, whether that is with me or any other practitioner, so that you can get to the root cause of what's going on. So the basic gut protocol that I want to talk about can really help. And again, it's not going to be a cure-all because it's not getting to the specifics of your unique condition. But there is this 3-part protocol that I think is really, really helpful when it comes to healing. So when you have issues with your gut, the ultimate goal is to optimize digestion and heal dysbiosis so that the immune system surrounding the gut can function optimally. And that is going to reduce the inflammation in the gut and allow better absorption of your nutrients so that you can also heal your hormones. The autoimmune process can be stopped if the interaction between genes and environmental triggers is prevented by reestablishing this intestinal barrier function. And so that means if you have a really strong intestinal barrier, you can potentially avoid having an autoimmune disease because of those harmful pathogens and undigested food particles. They're not getting through that gut lining and triggering this immune response over and over and over again. And so essentially, avoiding autoimmune disease can be a matter of personal preventative care. And that's really great news because that means if you're somebody who's struggling, there's a lot of power in your hand. And a lot of that starts with strengthening your gut health. And so whether you are, this is really important for people who are genetically predisposed, because that's one of the 3 triggers of having an autoimmune condition in the first place. So whether you're struggling with autoimmune, you are struggling hormonally, or you're just struggling digestively, that's the only thing you're dealing with. What can you do? The first step is to reduce your exposure to things that are causing inflammation in your gut. That is going to help heal the GI tract. So you want to start by removing the inflammation. That doesn't mean go start a probiotic. That doesn't mean go start eating fermented foods. This means just start by taking things away, right? And so there are a few things that you can do, and I'm not saying to do them all at once because that can get really, really overwhelming. But what I typically like to have clients do is eliminate things that are, whether it's the inflammatory foods. So the inflammatory foods that I tend to want to eliminate for at least 8 to 12 weeks with clients are wheat, dairy, soy, corn, and refined sugar. Eliminating those things at first to try to get that inflammation out. Even if you aren't necessarily sensitive to one, those foods typically cause some sort of inflammatory reaction in the GI for a lot of people. Conventionally raised meat are also associated with inflammation too, because of their high omega-6 content and because of the antibiotics and hormones that they are pumped with. The most inflammatory foods are the ones that are the hardest to give up. I want you to remember that as you go through this elimination process, because typically they are comfort foods. So it's really unrealistic to think that you are going to give up all of those foods all at once. What works really well is when you understand that these foods are negatively impacting your health and starting to remove them because you want to feel better. So again, I would say crowd these things out by filling your plate with other foods in their place, and do it slowly over time. Once you have a few days under your belt where these things are removed and you start to feel better, you start to feel more energy, more clarity, more focus, less bloating. You're like, oh my gosh, I can do this and I feel better and I have momentum now. It's going to feel really good. When you notice that, like I said, you're feeling better, you're just more motivated to go and continue down the path of what it is that's making you feel good. And so I like to tell clients, like, think of non-food related ways that you can reward yourself for, things that you would normally use food to reward yourself with. So a lot of times we'll end the day with a glass of wine or some sugar because it's like a mechanism to cope with stress or to reward ourselves. Could you instead go for a walk? Could you instead get a massage? Could you instead meet a friend or call a friend and get some serotonin and dopamine from other things that have nothing to do with food? I want you to remember too, that as you eliminate certain things from your diet, this is not forever. These changes will add up to really, really big results in the long term. The next thing you want to really reduce your exposure to is inflammatory toxins. So what do I mean by that? Alcohol. I know that people aren't going to like me for that. antibiotics, birth control pills, synthetic drugs, all of these things should be avoided unless they are absolutely necessary. These things act as toxins in your system and they damage your microbiome. NSAIDs like Advil, Aleve, those things should be avoided altogether because you guys, they weaken your gut lining. So reducing and eliminating alcohol. Let's go back to that one. This can be really hard for people who drink frequently, and you might struggle to comply with this piece because alcohol is deeply woven into the social fabric of your life. Maybe a glass of wine helps you to wind down after work. Maybe you go for a girls' night and you have a few drinks. You have a date night, you have weekend brunch. There are so many places where people drink, right? Resistance to changing this piece of your life is something I see with so many clients. But you have to ask yourself, how important is your health to you? How badly do you want to heal this digestive distress? If you look at this situation as temporary and something you're doing to love yourself, to care for yourself, it completely shifts your perspective. So get excited about these changes. Get excited about setting goals for yourself and highlighting where you're doing well, taking ownership of your health, rewarding yourself with the things that aren't going to negatively impact your gut health. It's also really important to look at who your support system is in this time when you're making a ton of changes. Is your partner on board? Do you have close friends who are going to keep you accountable? You have to communicate with people who are close to you to keep yourself accountable. So the next thing that you are going to want to do is to try to help yourself reseal your gut lining. So once all of those inflammatory things are removed, you do that for about 6 to 8 weeks, and then you are working to reseal the gut lining. And so bone broth, really, really great. I was doing this pretty much the entire last year. I was living in New York, and even when I was plant-based, I was still drinking bone broth. Bone broth is a digestive aid. It helps support and rebuild the gut. The gelatin in bone broth heals and seals your gut. It fills the holes of leaky gut and can really help to be a really healing component of a gut healing protocol. So I want you to make sure that you're getting your bone broth from a trusted place, that it comes from the freezer section, always getting organic bone broth if you can. You can also use gelatin or collagen in your diet. Collagen I do to this day. Gelatin and collagen can be added with different supplements, powders, or liquids. There are so many different ways that you can add those things in. You can put them in your soups, in your smoothies, in your lattes, and both can help improve intestinal permeability. Both can help improve the mucosal layer in your gut. But if you're going to choose one over the other, collagen is easier to digest than gelatin. Collagen can be dissolved into cold beverages, but gelatin can only be dissolved into warm. And so it's really, really good at healing those gut permeability issues. This should really only be the whether you choose collagen or gelatin, you should choose one or the other, right? Another thing that is super helpful that I used to rebuild my gut lining is a supplement called L-glutamine. So L-glutamine is an amino acid that feeds the cells of your gut lining, and it can help the permeability issues as well. But it should only be taken for a short period of time. Like I said, I've been taking collagen forever. When you're on L-glutamine, you really only want to be on it for a max of 12 weeks because it can be overstimulating to your brain cells. If you have a history of neurological issues, you want to avoid this altogether. And I will also say in this episode, I am by no means telling anyone to take these things. I am not giving you medical advice. I am not your doctor. I do not have your lab results. So if you're going to start any of these things, please consult with your doctor first before starting any sort of new supplements. I'm telling you what I've done and what I've done with clients. So what else can I say about this? If you are trying to go through your gut protocol, you'll want to do the glutamine probably as the last step if you're somebody who's dealing with dysbiosis. So another thing you'll want to do, or I shouldn't say it that way. Another thing that I've had a lot of clients do and that I do myself to this day is take turmeric. Curcumin is the active ingredient in turmeric, and you can get that in the spice aisle at your grocery store. I get it whole and then I juice it. You can also take it in capsule form. It reduces inflammation and it is activated when you take it with black pepper. You also want to make sure that you are having turmeric with some sort of fat so that it is absorbed. You can take it with coconut oil, with black pepper. There are a few different ways to take it. You can take it in a shot. And then the supplements, zinc and quercetrin. These two supplements can heal and seal the intestinal lining. So zinc carnosine is a nutrient that's really critical for repairing damaged cells that line the intestines. Carnosine is both an amino acid and a really, really powerful antioxidant, and it can protect your organs from stress. Quercetrin, on the other hand, is a flavonoid that's found in things like apples and leafy greens, and it's really healing for people who have leaky gut, can help prevent allergies and pain by preventing histamine release. So those are all things to help heal and seal the gut lining. The other thing that you're going to want to do when you're healing your gut is really thinking about balancing the good bacteria to the bad bacteria, right? And so how do you start to do that? Well, like I said, you have to start by eliminating a lot of the stuff that's causing the bad bacteria to overgrow in the first place. That's for the first 6 to 8 weeks. From that point on, if things look and feel better to you, you can start increasing your consumption of things like fermented foods. You can start taking a multi-strain probiotic, digestive enzymes, remembering to chew your food. One of the biggest reasons that I see people with bloating is, of course, like I said, because of their stress. And the second they start to chew their food, put the screens away, and slow down when they are eating, their digestion completely changes because they have more blood flow, better nutrient absorption, all of these different things. So really thinking about chewing your food, adding more fiber to your diet so that you can feed those good bacteria in your gut. So thinking about these things in more detail. Fermented foods, probiotic-rich foods have been shown to really help improve the health of your microbiome. Think sauerkraut, kimchi, any sort of fermented vegetables. The wider the variety, the better it is for you. Again, if you don't have an overgrowth of bad bacteria, if you've already healed that part of your gut. If you're eating these things or taking a probiotic when your gut is still a wreck with an overgrowth of toxic inflammatory bacteria, you can also feed those bad bacteria with a probiotic. So you want to make sure that's taken care of first. So remember, that's really, really critical. Probiotic capsules, I typically will recommend to clients 10 to 50 billion colony forming units per day to start, taken on an empty stomach. Really, you want to switch it up to maintain your gut health. Even after the issue is resolved, I still take a probiotic to this day. You want to start with smaller doses and work your way up to higher doses. And then digestive enzymes are one of the biggest digestive helpers. They help your body break down food more efficiently so that it can be absorbed and used after you eat. Now let's talk about the chewing piece. I want to go into more detail here, okay? I really want you to notice how many times you're chewing your food. Thinking about most people chew like 3 or 4 times before they swallow. Optimal digestion requires you to chew your food 25 times before you swallow. And so many people are scrolling on their phones, writing emails, driving. No, 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 no. We have to chew our food not only as a part of mindful eating and to properly cue our hunger and fullness hormones, but also in order to activate those digestive enzymes in our saliva so we can absorb the nutrients from our food. If you chew your food better, you're much more likely to have less bloating, less burping, less digestive pain. And guess what? Out of all of the recommendations I am making to you, this one is free. So you'll get to savor your food longer. There's so many benefits. So chew your food. The next thing, fiber. I really, really want to like shout from the rooftops, fiber. 80+% of people are not getting enough fiber in their diet. Like we discussed in like the earlier section of this podcast, having enough fiber feeds those good bacteria. And most people are getting, like I said, not enough. Most people are getting way less than 35 grams a day. 35 grams is what I strive for. But the other issue is that you don't want to do it all at once. So if you're only getting 7 grams of fiber a day, do not have 35 grams of fiber tomorrow. You have to give your body a chance to adjust. Otherwise, you are going to start to have all sorts of issues like gas and more bloating. Your GI tract can reprogram itself to adjust to the types of food that it's having, but you just need to start to add fiber slowly. So start to add 2 to 3 grams of fiber per week until you get to that 35 grams, right? Now, when you think about how often should I be going to the bathroom? You should be going to the bathroom. So for proper absorption of your food, the transit time should be 12 to 24 hours from eating. And so that means if you eat at 7 p.m., for dinner, you should be having a bowel movement the next morning between 7 a.m. and noon, right? You really should be having your your first bowel movement of the day within that 12 to 24-hour range. And you should be going to the bathroom at least once a day. Another thing that you want to add into your diet is prebiotic starch. There's so much research that shows that starches, selectively feed good bacteria in your gut to help maintain that healthy balance. And so there are so many things that have resistant starch, but that's lentils, beans, chickpeas, potatoes. There are so many ways that you can get it. Now, if you're somebody with SIBO and you can't have beans, again, being on that elimination diet for a while is going to be important until you get those bad bacteria cleared out. The last thing that I will tell you is lighting up your digestive fire. So a lot of people who are taking things like Tums and Zantac are actually not only causing themselves issues when it comes to bad bacteria and good bacteria, but also stomach acid issues. It is so important that your stomach is producing adequate amounts of HCA to break down your food and keep out bad bacteria. So how do you start to fix your stomach acids? First, you can determine if you have low stomach acid by paying attention to your symptoms. And I think it's really counterintuitive for people. A lot of people think if I have heartburn, then I have high stomach acid. If you have heartburn, acid reflux, burping, bloating, gas, nausea after eating, you probably have a stomach acid issue. And yes, you can go see a functional doctor or a gastroenterologist to determine if you have stomach acid levels. But if you are seeing a doctor and you test positive for stomach acid deficiency, or you have those symptoms all the time, then there's a really easy way to start to stimulate your stomach acid production. That is why I put lemon juice and apple cider vinegar in my water every day. I have a big thing of water. I put it in my hydro flask, and then I put lemon juice, apple cider vinegar, turmeric, a pinch of Celtic sea salt. But I have that big thing of water with all those ingredients because not only is it great for my adrenals, it's also really great for my gut health. Starting every morning with this lemon juice, this apple cider vinegar, it's alkalizing your system. So have that in the morning before anything else. I think that really thinking about having these things as a way of prevention versus, I mean, and you can use them to help improve stomach acid as well, but they're really, really great to help and things to do like on a daily basis versus just when you're healing. You can also take digestive bitters. Digestive bitters can be this little tincture. This has been used by people for thousands of years in Eastern medicine to improve digestion. So the ability for bitters to improve HCA, bile, like there's so much confirmation of this in research. So look for a digestive bitters that has things. You can get something like this at Whole Foods: dandelion, ginger, fennel, peppermint. All of those things are really helpful for helping with your digestion and lighting those digestive fires and making sure you're producing enough stomach acid if you're dealing with stuff like heartburn. The last thing when it comes to stomach acid is supplementing with something called betaine HCl. Now, you again want to make sure that you're getting tested, that you know that you need this before starting to take it. But it's also really important for anybody who is taking something like an anti-inflammatory drug to not take HCl. So again, working with a practitioner is really key. But anti-inflammatory medications like steroids and aspirin, those things can damage your GI lining. And supplementing with HCl at the same time can aggravate that and cause things like ulcers. So making sure you're working with someone who can really help you understand what the risks are and not taking certain medications with certain supplements is really, really key as you work through some of these recommendations and suggestions. If you have ulcers, you should not take HCl. I'm not here to diagnose you or tell you what you have. I'm just here to give you information so you can use that information to empower you to go and talk to your doctor and get more testing so you can implement the things that I've shared today that actually work. I'm here to provide holistic solutions to help you rebuild and repair. I want you to have the tools at your hand to be able to take these things and again, heal yourself without feeling like you have to live with this digestive distress forever. Because if I can change, and I was in a really bad way with my digestion, you guys, to the point where there were many, many days in my 20s that I was in tears. You can heal your digestion too. It's just about knowing specifically what's going on and then using the proper protocols, supplements, and dietary shifts to make the change. So I hope that this episode was helpful. I know that we covered a lot of ground, so feel free to go back, rewind, re-listen to a part that resonated with you where you felt like, oh, these symptoms really ring true, and then go get the testing that you need. And like I said, we offer that testing here at WBK, but there are plenty of holistic practitioners out there that also offer this type of testing so you can implement what you need and leave the rest. Okay, I will see you all next week. Have a beautiful week, and thank you so much for listening.
I really hope that you enjoyed that episode. You can follow me on Instagram at Wellness by Kelley or head over to our website, wellnessbykelley.com. Sign up now for the Wellness by Kelley 7-day free trial on our app or head over to our course and now get 20% off the course or 10% off of the membership with the code Balancing Chaos, all one word, BALANCINGCHAOS. In our course, you'll get access to an emailed lab review plus protocols built out to help you heal with whatever hormonal imbalance you're struggling with. With our membership, you'll receive a library of content with our app with low impact workouts, blood sugar balancing recipes, and mindfulness meditations, all designed to help you balance your hormones and help you feel like you are living your most beautiful, joyful, and vital life. If you like the show, please leave a rating and review. That is the best way to help the show grow and get to more listeners. We hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next week.